Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a really eclectic stack of sources to get through today. I mean, usually we try to stick to one clear lane, but today we are all over the map.
We really are. It's a completely wild mix.
Yeah, we've got a massive logistical breakdown of a nude cruise. We've got a weather disaster unfolding in the Mediterranean, and we've got a highbrow art curation program on the world's newest megaship.
It does sound like we just threw darts at a cruise industry bingo board, right? But you know I love finding the hidden thread, and when you look closer at these three stories, specifically coming out of early 2026, they actually tell a very unified story about control.
Control, that's the theme. Because, I mean, a nude cruise usually screams the exact opposite of control to me.
You would think so. But it's actually about how the cruise industry is trying to hyper-control the onboard experience. They're creating these micro-communities and curated worlds precisely because they are losing control of the external environment.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, we are seeing a massive clash between the micro-community inside the ship and the macro problems outside, like increasingly volatile weather.
I really love that framing. Micro communities versus macro problems. So our mission today for you, the listener, is to unpack how these cruise lines are managing these specific tribes of people while literally battling the elements. And frankly, there is no better example of a specific tribe than the group currently aboard the Norwegian Pearl.
The big nude cruise.
Exactly. I'll be honest, when I opened the source material for this, the Bare Necessities Charter, I fully expected something tabloidy. But the documentation is surprisingly bureaucratic.
Very bureaucratic.
Right, this isn't a free-for-all. It's a highly complex logistical operation.
It really is. And we should clarify for everyone right away that this isn't a small private yacht tucked away in some hidden cove. This is the Norwegian Pearl. It's a Jewel-class ship, a mainstream vessel that holds nearly 2,400 passengers.
Which is huge.
Massive. The fact that Norwegian Cruise Line is willing to hand over the keys to a charter group like Bare Necessities speaks volumes about the economics of the industry right now.
It's the guaranteed revenue model, right? That's the appeal.
Precisely. A full ship charter is the holy grail for a cruise line. You don't have to worry about marketing to fill 2,400 cabins one by one. You just sell the whole inventory to one operator, in this case Bare Necessities Tour and Travel, and they handle the rest.
It effectively turns a mass-market ship into a private club for a week. And this charter specifically sailed out of Port Miami on February 9th, 2026, heading for the Southern Caribbean.
So let's get into the mechanics of this private club, because the rules of engagement here are fascinating. I think there's a stereotype that on a nude cruise, you just walk up the gangway and drop everything right there in the terminal.
Right, just immediately disrobe.
No, absolutely not. The sources are very emphatic about this. There are strict zones of engagement. The term they use is clothing optional, but optional implies you can choose whenever you want. In reality, it's highly regulated based on where the ship is physically located.
Yeah, I saw the term port protocol in the notes.
Yes, that is rule number one. When the Norwegian Pearl is docked, say, in Ocho Rios or Aruba or Curacao, which were all on this itinerary, everyone must be fully clothed. And that includes the balconies.
That was a specific point in the documents that caught my eye. Even if you are in your private cabin, if you are standing on the balcony while the ship is in port, you have to be dressed.
It makes perfect sense if you think about it from a diplomatic standpoint. You are guests in a foreign country. You cannot have 2,000 people standing on balconies waving at the locals in the buff.
It would be an instant international incident.
Exactly. They actually have a rule that you cannot be nude on the balcony until the ship has cleared the port and an official announcement is made over the PA system.
It's like the seatbelt sign on an airplane, but for pants.
That is a disturbingly accurate analogy. But yes, and this extends to the interior of the ship as well. The main dining rooms, the specialty restaurants, the captain's reception, those are always textile zones.
Textile zones.
Yes, meaning clothes required. You aren't going to Le Bistro or the steakhouse for a formal dinner without clothes. It preserves a certain level of decorum and hygiene around formal food service.
But the buffet is a different story, right?
The Garden Cafe, or the self-service buffet area, is a clothing optional zone. And this leads us to the single most discussed aspect of nude cruising logistics in the source material, which is the hygiene question.
I was waiting for this because purely from a sanitation standpoint, the idea of a nude buffet is challenging.
It is, which is why the towel rule is the golden law. It is the absolute non-negotiable rule of naturist cruising. If you are nude, or even if you are just wearing a thong or a G-string, there must be a barrier between you and the furniture.
So you carry it with you.
Always. The ship's crew has to distribute thousands of small towels specifically for this purpose. You must sit on your towel at all times.
That sounds like a staggering amount of laundry for the crew.
It's a massive operational tweak. The housekeeping load significantly increases on these charters. You aren't just washing regular cabin towels, you are washing thousands of sitting towels constantly throughout the day.
Wow.
But it's not just about germs, it's about social signaling. Carrying your towel is a sign that you respect the community and the shared space.
Speaking of shared space and respect, in the age of smartphones, privacy must be a total nightmare to enforce. Everyone has a high-definition camera in their pocket. How do they handle that?
This is where the culture of the naturist community really clashes with modern tech culture. The sources highlight strict no photo and video zones. You cannot take a photo of another passenger without their explicit consent.
And in some areas, cameras are just banned entirely, right?
Completely banned. It creates a surveillance-free bubble. And we really need to make a critical distinction here, one that Linda Weber, the president of the American Association for Nude Recreation, pointed out in the source material.
This is a naturist cruise, not a swinger cruise.
Correct. I think a lot of people conflate the two. There are cruises specifically for the lifestyle or swinger community where sexual activity is part of the dynamic. This is not that. In fact, overt sexual behavior is strictly prohibited here.
And interestingly, Linda Weber noted that even certain types of clothing like fetish wear or lingerie are not allowed.
Yeah.
Showing up in latex gear would actually get you in more trouble than showing up with nothing.
Exactly. The goal, according to Weber, is social equalization. She argues that when you remove clothing, and by extension, brands, watches, jewelry, you remove status markers.
You are just people.
Right. It's meant to be body positive, social equalization, just people being themselves. And they even extend this bubble to the land, which I thought was a huge selling point for this itinerary.
The stop at Great Stirrup Cay.
Yes. This is the advantage of Norwegian Cruise Line having a private island in the Bahamas. Because NCL owns the island, they can extend the ship's rules directly to the beach.
Which you couldn't do on a public beach in Nassau.
Never. So for that one day, the microcommunity expands its territory onto the sand. It reinforces the idea that the ship is a sanctuary. For that week, the Norwegian Pearl isn't just a vehicle, it's a fortress against the social norms of the outside world.
And that is a perfect segue. Because while the passengers on the Pearl were enjoying their controlled manufactured environment in the Caribbean, passengers on the MSC Splendida over in the Mediterranean were dealing with a reality that was completely out of control.
Total chaos.
This story gave me anxiety just reading it. We are pivoting from the ultimate freedom of the Nude cruise to the ultimate restriction of a winter storm.
We are looking at the MSC Splendida, a Fantasia-class ship. This is a beast of a vessel. It's 137,000 gross tons, holding nearly 4,000 passengers.
Huge.
And in February 2026, it ran straight into a Mediterranean winter gale event.
The report said 50-knot winds. For context for you listening, that is approaching 60 miles per hour. That is tropical storm force wind.
It is. And people might think, well, big ship, big deal. Shouldn't it just plow through?
Right, it's massive.
But a ship like the Splendida is basically a giant apartment block floating on the water. It has a massive amount of windage.
Windage?
Yeah, that's the surface area for the wind to push against. When you have 50-knot winds hitting the broadside of a ship that is 20 stories tall, the thrusters, which are the little propellers used to push the ship sideways into a dock, they simply cannot compete.
So you literally cannot park the car.
You can't. It becomes physically unsafe to approach the pier. You risk crushing the hull or destroying the concrete dock. So MSC had to make some very tough calls. First, they canceled the stop in Tunis, specifically the port of La Galette.
And this wasn't the first time, right? The notes say this was the second cancellation in just a month.
Right, they had to skip it on January 8th and then again on February 12th. This touches on the macro problem we mentioned earlier. The Mediterranean in winter offers great prices because it's the off-season, but the weather stability just isn't there.
But missing Tunis was just a missed port of call. That happens on cruises. The real crisis, the one that caused the actual logistical meltdown, was Marseille.
Yes, let's dig into the Marseille situation, because this wasn't just, oh sorry, no croissant today. This was a structural failure of the entire itinerary.
Marseille was scheduled for February 15th.
Exactly. But the Mistral winds, which are notorious in that region, blowing incredibly cold and hard from the north, made the approach to Marseille impossible. So the captain diverted the ship to Villefranche-sur-Mer.
Geographically, why did they go there?
Villefranche is naturally sheltered. It's tucked in right between Nice and Monaco, and the coastal topography, all those steep hills, blocks those specific northerly winds. It's a classic safe harbor that sailors have used for centuries.
But here is the massive problem with that diversion. Villefranche-sur-Mer is 130 miles away from Marseille.
And Marseille isn't just a sightseeing stop, it's an interporting hub.
Right. And for listeners who might not know, this is a key operational detail for European cruises that makes them very different from American ones.
Completely different. Unlike in Miami, where everyone gets on and off at the exact same time, in the Mediterranean, people embark and disembark at almost every major city on the loop.
So you had hundreds of people on that ship who were supposed to end their vacation in Marseille. Their cars were parked in Marseille, their trains were leaving from Marseille, and suddenly they dropped off 130 miles down the coast.
It is a massive distance to bridge. The logistics of moving that many people on short notice is an absolute nightmare.
What does the cruise line even do in that scenario?
It's chaos. You're talking about sourcing dozens of motor coaches on just hours of notice, organizing luggage handling for hundreds of panicking people, and driving them 3 hours back to their original port.
It sounds miserable.
It highlights just how fragile these itineraries really are in the winter. The weather can break the whole system.
But what of the people who were just visiting? The ones who didn't have to get off and go home?
They lost the port entirely. But this is where the micro-community aspect comes back into play. MSC pivoted hard. Since the passengers couldn't go to France, they brought the entertainment to them on the ship.
They opened up all the sea day amenities.
Yes, they fired up the Formula One simulator, the 4D cinema, the VR zones. They ran karaoke.
They turned the ship into the destination because the actual destination was completely inaccessible.
They had to. When you have nearly 4,000 people trapped inside due to weather, cabin fever is a real operational risk. You have to distract them.
It shows that the modern cruise ship has to be a self-contained city, capable of functioning completely independently of the outside world.
It's a stark reminder. You can build the biggest ship on Earth, but if the ocean wants to push you 130 miles east, you go 130 miles east. The ocean always bats last.
It really does.
And I think this vulnerability to nature is actually driving the third trend we're seeing in the sources today.
Which is this desperate attempt by cruise lines to manufacture authenticity inside the ship itself.
Exactly. If you can't guarantee the destination, you have to build the culture inside the hull.
Which brings us to Royal Caribbean and the Legend of the Seas. This is an Icon-class ship, right? The biggest class of ships in the world.
It is. And usually when we talk about Icon class, we talk about water slides, massive glass domes, or how many swimming pools they can physically fit on the roof.
Right, the hardware.
But the news here is about their artist discovery program.
This felt really different to me. Usually cruise ship art is, well, it's hotel art. It's beige, it's inoffensive, it's a generic landscape that matches the carpet in the hallway.
Beige is a very kind way to put it. Yes, traditionally, maritime art was designed to be ignored. It was just filler. But Royal Caribbean is running an open call with a deadline of March 1st, 2026, specifically for emerging artists from the Caribbean and Central America.
The submission requires 5 samples of conceptual work. But why emerging artists? Is that just code for cheap?
Cynically, maybe a little bit. It's certainly cheaper than buying a Picasso for the lobby. But strategically, it's about credibility.
Gossip.
If you buy a generic print from a European art house, it has no soul. It's just decor. If you commission a massive mural from a local artist in Barbados or Honduras, you are buying cultural cachet.
You're trying to prove that your massive floating American city actually has a real connection to the region it sails in.
Exactly. And they're putting this art in prime locations. The notes mention the murals will go in 6 key spots, including the Royal Promenade, the embarkation area, and the suite sun deck and lobby.
That placement is crucial. The Royal Promenade is the main street of the ship. It's basically the mall.
Yeah.
Putting culturally specific murals there is a huge statement.
But the embarkation area is even more important. That's the very first thing you see when you walk on board. They want the first impression to be, you aren't just in a floating mall, you are in the Caribbean.
It feels like a direct attempt to solve the criticism that cruises are placeless. You know, that feeling that you could be absolutely anywhere in the world and it wouldn't matter.
Right. There is a growing backlash against the generic bubble vacation. People want to feel like they actually traveled somewhere, but as we just saw with MSC, actually getting people to the destination safely is getting harder.
So Royal Caribbean is just bringing the destination onto the ship. They're creating a synthetic version of the destination.
Yes. Look at the other features announced for Legend of the Seas. They have the Royal Railway Legend Station,
Which is a dining experience designed to look and feel exactly like a train ride.
a fake train on a real boat.
That is just layers of simulation.
It sounds totally absurd, doesn't it? But it fits the pattern perfectly. They are building transportive experiences, whether it's a fake train or a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory stage show or a gorgeous mural by a Caribbean artist. The goal is to make the passenger feel like they are somewhere highly specific, even if they never step foot on land.
And interestingly, Royal Caribbean is very confident about this ship. They actually moved the launch date up.
They did, and this is a rare positive sign for the industry. It was supposed to debut July 11th, 2026. Now it's sailing July 4th out of Rome.
In an industry plagued by shipyard delays, moving a launch up by a week is a massive flex.
It really is. It shows they are fully ready to deploy this new culturally immersive model.
So when we zoom out and look at all three of these stories, the Nude charter, the storm diversion, the art program, what is the real through line here for the listener?
The through line is the death of the generic cruise.
Break that down for us.
If you are booking a cruise in 2026, you aren't just booking a hotel room on the water anymore. You are choosing a very specific reality.
Okay.
On the Norwegian Pearl, the reality is a naturist community where the outside world's rules simply don't apply. It's a reality of total body acceptance, towel rules, and strict privacy.
Right. And on the MSC Splendida.
The reality is a high-tech fortress. It's a reality where when the world outside gets dangerous and the winds hit 50 knots, the ship just closes its shell and entertains you with virtual reality and 4D movies.
And on the Legend of the Seas, the reality is a curated cultural gallery. It's a reality where the culture is brought directly to you, safe and sanitized, painted right on the walls of the promenade.
It seems like the industry is slicing the market into thinner and thinner wedges.
They really have to, because they can't control the macro factors anymore. They can't control the weather, the geopolitics, the sudden port closures. So they are doubling down on controlling the micro factors.
The vibe, the art, the specific crowd of people on board.
Exactly. They're building bubbles that are so interesting and so tailored to you that you won't mind if they never actually pop.
It's a very compelling shift. You used to book a cruise to go see the world. Now it feels like you book a cruise to see a better, highly curated version of the world created entirely inside the hull.
That's it, exactly. And that brings up a really provocative question for you, the listener, to chew on after we wrap up here.
As these ships become more self-sufficient with their own strict laws, like the Nude cruise, their own art galleries, their own weatherproof entertainment, are we reaching a point where the actual itinerary is just a suggestion?
If the ship is the destination, does it matter if the wind forces you to skip a port?
That is a big question, because if you are on the Norwegian Pearl, you probably don't care if you miss Aruba, because your entire community is right there on board with you. You're there for the people, not the place.
But if you are on the MSC Splendida and you specifically wanted to see Marseille and walk the streets, you care deeply.
So the industry is betting billions of dollars that if they make the ship cool enough and culturally authentic enough, you won't mind missing the real world.
They are making a massive bet. But I'm not sure every passenger is ready to make that trade just yet. There is still a romance to the actual destination that a mural, no matter how beautiful it is, can't quite replace.
It's the tension between the simulation and the reality. And clearly, looking at these sources from early 2026, that tension is tighter than ever.
Absolutely. And as the weather gets wilder, that tension is only going to increase. Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive. Whether you're packing a towel for the buffet, a paintbrush for the promenade, or just a really good raincoat for the Mediterranean winter. Thanks for joining us.
Stay curious, everyone.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.